The Denver Broncos are embracing the opportunity to learn from Week 2's film against the Washington Commanders as it helps them in their preparation in Week 3 against the Miami Dolphins. What do we hear from Broncos inside linebacker Josie Jewell and offensive tackle Mike McGlinchey? We're going to get that much more with a cup of coffee on today's brand new episode. Good Morning Broncos. What's up? Good morning, Broncos country. Welcome into another episode of G&B, your daily bite-sized cup of coffee and all things Denver Broncos content and coverage here at Mile High Sports. Every team, every day. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel so you never miss out on all the coverage and content we got going on. And hey, if you're a Denver Nuggets fan, make sure you go check out the interview that Ryan Blackburn did here, our Denver Nuggets beat reporter at MHS, with Jalen Pickett, one of the newest additions to the Denver Nuggets this upcoming season. Go check that out here. Mile High Sports. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by our friends over there, Superbook Sports here. We'll tell you about them a little bit later on as the show progresses. But Denver is learning from the film from Week 2. And obviously, I think with all the overreaction, all the skies falling, the season's over after 0-2, I can tell you this. Broncos players and coaches, they're not panicking. They're not freaking out. I know the fan base is, but they're not. They're phasing out all the outside noise that's going on right now, all the conversation happening with national media about them, with local media talking about them and where they're at. They understand there's a lot of things that they're going to have to get a jump on. They're going to have to correct, but they're not worried about what we have to say, and rightfully so. I would be a little concerned if they were worried about what people like me had to say or national media pundits. Everybody's got a platform. Everybody's got one of these little microphones here now these days. And a lot of people just spew a lot of stuff out there, but they understand, hey, you know what? There's 15 games left here in the NFL regular season. There is a lot of work that needs to be done between now and then. And look, this Denver Broncos team, we will see them evolve from Week 2 going into Week 3, but we'll see them by the time Week 12 comes around. I wonder what this Broncos football team is going to look like. That, to me, I think is a huge question. And I think so much of it as well is going to be contingent upon health. We've seen some good trends here from the Broncos offense. I would say my only gripe, my only thing that I would like to see them do a little bit more of is get that run game going a little bit more. I think when the times they've run the football inside with Javonte Williams, with Samaje Perine, I feel like they've had some pretty good success, but then they went away from it. You know, Marvin Mims not getting a target in the second half of that game against Washington. You've got to find a way to get the ball in some of your playmakers' hands, utilize what they do well, and you have to obviously counterpunch what the opposing defense is going to do, the adjustments that they're going to make. So, I mean, it's early on in the season. 0-2 is not ideal. You lose 2 home games. It doesn't make the optics look pretty, but for some reason, hey, here we are. If Denver, for some reason, finds a way to win on the road in Miami, it changes the narrative. Then they go to Chicago. Then we all know at that point, hey, the Chicago game right now, that's a team that seems like they're in a lot of turmoil, and they're also in the national headlines here in the last 24 to 48 hours. So all of a sudden, let's say Denver starts off 0-2 at home, but let's say they win 2 straight games on the road. Okay, hey, I think the vibe and the narrative in the eyes of the fan base is going to change just a little bit here, but Denver is okay. And I can just tell you this, the vibe, just going around and talking to players inside Denver's locker room on Wednesday, they're not panicking. They're not worried. They know that there's some things that they have to adjust on, that they have to correct going forward on the offensive side of the ball, on special teams, on defense. More importantly, it's just becoming a little bit more disciplined, getting rid of the nature of, hey, you got 12 penalties in 2 weeks on the defensive side of the ball. How do you clean that up? And it's just playing more contained. And obviously, we'll hear from Josie Jewell here in a little bit here. But Broncos country, I think we should dive into the injury and the practice report from Wednesday at the Centura Health Training Center in Dove Valley here. Now, when we were able to attend our media viewing portion here, these were the following players that we saw listed on the side field, stretching, doing some rehabilitation exercises over there. Broncos safety Justin Simmons was one. You see the guy who had a clean bill of health last week during the game on Sunday against the Commanders. There were a couple times he came up and delivered a hard hit, and you can tell, hey, you know, he got up a little slow on a couple of plays, and so now he's dealing with something we'll disclose here in a little bit. Outside linebacker Frank Clark and Baron Browning, both those guys on the side field. We know Frank Clark out at least a couple of weeks here. Baron Browning still on the PUP list, but as Week 3 is approaching, hey, George Payton told us just a few weeks ago before the season even began, they're going to evaluate where he's at come Week 4, see if he can be ready for Week 5 at that point. And then if not, then obviously maybe after Week 8 is a possibility here for Baron Browning in terms of the window in which they may activate him. But he's made tremendous progress. Just watching him day in and day out over on the side field. He's doing more movement. He looks like he's moving well. And it's just about once he's able to get cleared, it's going on, okay, hey, putting the helmet on, the shoulder pads, and doing all your position-specific drills, getting that contact initiation going there. Once that happens, I think he'll come around. And look, I think that he'll be a tremendous addition to them defensively and what they're able, hoping to do going forward, especially with the outside linebacker rotation that features Nick Bonito, Jonathan Cooper, Randy Gregory. And then obviously whenever Frank Clark returns, Denver's got pass rushing waves there. Instead of rotating 3 like they did against the Commanders, they could rotate 5. And you know what? I'm okay with that. I think that gives Denver an advantage. You can do different things with different guys in that situation. The more personnel that you can use, the better. Cornerback K'Wan Williams, who underwent ankle surgery before the start of the regular season, has continued to make progress over on the side field. We'll see where he's at following week 4. Could he be in line for a week 5 return against the New York Jets? It's a possibility here. PJ Locke, I anticipate, could be ready for that week 5 game against the Jets. And I think right now, Denver at the safety position specifically, they're missing a guy like PJ. Gosh, they're missing a guy like Caden Stearns, who unfortunately his season ended during week 1. PJ Locke's return will give them a huge boost. I think on the back end there, Kareem Jackson will obviously not be suspended for his hit on Logan Thomas. The NFL is going to fine him probably a pretty significant amount of money this upcoming Saturday. You'll get the report on that. But Denver right now, I think, especially with Justin Simmons being on the side field dealing with something, you need safety help there. You've got Delarian Turner-Yell, a young guy, second year in the NFL, still has a lot of room to grow. J.L. Skinner, obviously another player who I don't feel is ready to be on the field as a safety right now on this defense. But then again, you may not have a choice. You may have to accelerate what you have going. They have Devin Key on the practice squad as well. But K'Wan Williams, PJ Locke making good progress over on the side field. Offensive tackle Alex Polcheski, who obviously suffered dislocated fingers in that third and final preseason game. He was on the side field doing some work as well. And then tight end Greg Dulcich doing some stretching and some light work over there with Bo Lowry. And then defensive lineman Mike Purcell was also on the side field for Wednesday's practice here. But outside of all those names that we mentioned, a lot of those guys we mentioned are already on a short-term IR. They're working their way back. But the guys who are on the active roster right now that you have to keep an eye on here, Justin Simmons is being listed with a designation on his hip coming out of Sunday's week 2 game against the Washington Commanders. And I think the key for us to maybe monitor here this week for Justin specifically is, okay, hey, he was a DNP on Wednesday. Does he maybe upgrade from DNP to limited on Thursday? And if not, okay, if he has 2 straight days in a row of DNP, does he go from DNP to limited on Friday, which I think obviously would put his status for Sunday's game into question. But if he goes limited and then transitions to full at some point this week, he'll be good to go. But I think it's smart that Denver just takes it easy here with Simmons. He's a big part of their defense and what they want to do. And while they can't afford to miss him on the field, you can't put him in a situation where, hey, if he's banged up and he's not ready to go a full 100%, then you have to monitor what you're able to do there. And I think that's something that Denver, Sean Payton, they're doing their due diligence on there. But we'll monitor Simmons' progress throughout the week here. Mike Purcell and Frank Clark were the other 2 players who were listed as DNPs. Mike Purcell popped up onto the injury report with an ankle. Once again, with him, we'll monitor. We already know Frank Clark is going to be out at least several weeks, so we'll see where he's at, maybe going into next week. But I don't think he's likely to play here on Sunday against the Dolphins. And then offensive tackle Garrett Bowles, he popped up on the injury report with an ankle. He was a limited participant in Wednesday's practice. And so for those of you that wonder, what does limited mean? It's where, okay, hey, if you're limited, that means that you, by the NFL's definition, you participated in your position-specific drills, right? Individual period, but you didn't really participate in team drills in capacity there. So for those of you that are eager to know what that is, there you go. There's some insight for you here. But Broncos country, we also learned a little bit as well from Mike McGlinchey, Josie Jewell. We'll get to what they had to tell us after practice on Wednesday at the Centura Health Training Center. Real quick, let me tell you about the sponsor of today's episode of the show. It's our good friends over there at Superbook Sports. Why bet with the big boys this football season? Instead, try your hand with the local book, Superbook Sports, this fall. Superbook Sports is the book next door, just a dedicated team of the best odds makers in Las Vegas, making sure you get the best prices and parlays anywhere. And now Superbook will give you a bonus of up to $250 when you sign up and wager on the same day and use the promo code MileHigh. So bet with the best and use promo code MileHigh this football season with Superbook Sports. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. What did the Denver Broncos learn from the Week 2 film in their loss against the Washington Commanders? As we've talked about here on the show, players aren't dwelling on the outcome of that game. Obviously, they wanted to win, but they're not panicking about maybe the direction that they're heading. There's a lot of belief inside that locker room talking to players that they're going to be just fine, that they're going to play a cleaner game. They're going to play better on offense, defense, special teams, and those three phases going forward, and that it's a process, but the buy-in is there here from the players. And so while they're not panicking, Broncos country, the fans are panicking here. So we'll see if maybe this week in a big win against Miami on the road, will that change the optics in the eyes of the fan base? It's an interesting question here. But first off, let's start on the defensive side of the ball. Obviously for Denver, we talked about it in yesterday's Tell of the Tape here on GMB. They're surrendering a lot of yards based on chunk plays. Obviously, 4 screen plays allowed against the Commanders that went for 80-plus yards in Sunday's loss there. That contributes to their negative defensive ranking here when you look at the Tell of the Tape, as we talked about yesterday. But the other thing that Denver's really got to clean up is it's missed tackles. There's some of that stuff going on. But more importantly, it's penalties that keep opponent drives alive. 12 penalties committed by Denver's defense so far this season through 2 games. It's something you have to clean up. It's not sustainable to play like that and expect to win. And that's something that Broncos inside linebacker Josie Jewell acknowledged on what he learned from the film and what guys need to do defensively going forward.
I need to slow down on the penalties. It's definitely a huge thing. I think that's number one for us. And then we need to create the turnovers. We had at least 2 chances on those picks, so we need to be able to reel those in next time. And then just being able to play fundamental football. Stay where you're supposed to be. Don't try to do too much. Everybody do your job and just settle down. And if we do our own job, we can beat people. We're good enough on defense. We just need to be able to settle down and do that every single play.
And I think that's the biggest thing, right? Being able to settle down. And Sean Payton alluded to this earlier on in the week where he talked about not only just on offense and defense, that maybe guys are thinking too much. There's too much verbiage going on. There's too much adjustment due to pre-snap stuff, a lot of motion that you're going to see. That maybe it's getting guys to get out of position a little bit. It's causing them to think too much. You want to be able to avoid that. Sean Payton has said that's something that the Broncos and the coaches, that's on them, and they have to address certain things, and they're working on that there. But I agree with Josie. You have to slow down on the penalties. You just have to focus on doing your job. And look, this is going to be a tough test this week against the Miami Dolphins because what they do so much motion and movement on the offensive side of the ball. We in the football world, we call that window dressing. But obviously there's a talented team, a high-octane offense in terms of the number 1 offense in net yards per game. We talk about yards per play, the 3rd highest scoring offense right now in the NFL, averaging 30 points per game. That is the Miami Dolphins. Broncos inside linebacker Josie Jewell knows that, hey, it's going to be a tough test for them this Sunday, and they have to bring their A game.
Yeah, they got a fast offense. And they got a lot of window dressing out there. They got those guys on the outside. The running backs are really good. The line's solid. I mean, they got a bunch of good players. So, we're going to have to bring our A game.
It's always a challenge to be able to go on the road. And, one thing my coaches always told me is when you have a road trip, you have to get on a plane, you have to get on a bus, whatever it may be. The idea and the mentality you have to have as a football player, and also it comes from your coaching staff, is you have to always anticipate that you're already down. By the time you get off the bus, you're down 14-0 on that scoreboard. And obviously you don't want Denver to be in that situation. And I don't think in a real game, Denver doesn't want to be in that situation. But you just have to have the mentality, hey, road games are tough. But for Broncos offensive tackle Mike McGlinchey, he touched on how maybe changing up the routine a little bit and preparing yourself for a road game is something that could be a benefit here for the Broncos this week.
It's incredibly important. Honestly, sometimes road games sometimes are a little easier to prepare for. I think we're getting on the plane on Friday. That's a long flight to do a lot of prep and a lot of research and a lot of film work and all that kind of stuff. So I've always enjoyed going on the road. I think you can lock in a little bit, get away from your normal routine, and you got nothing else to do besides focus on football. Obviously, put ourselves in a little bit of a hole, and we got to bounce back, and that's what we're going to try to do against Miami.
I agree with that, and I think your routine is super important. You can get a lot done, right? You fly from Denver, you fly to the East Coast. There's a lot of time there, and obviously, if Denver's getting in there Saturday, there's a lot of different things that they can do. You're watching the iPad on the plane. Obviously, you're watching film all week long, but you can do more extensive stuff on a trip. It's good to get away from your normal routine here in Denver, Colorado, and do stuff with your teammates. This is also a great opportunity for team bonding, which we all know, hey, if you have a great bond as a team, it leads to sometimes a better on-field product, and there's more cohesion. There's more chemistry and consistency with them as well. So I think that is something that you should definitely monitor here if you're a Broncos fan. It's good to get out and get out of your routine. But in terms of what did the Broncos offense learn, what did Mike McGlinchey say he and the offensive side of the ball they learned about after watching the Week 2 offensive film against the Washington Commanders. They had that 21-3 lead. They had some good things going, but then they shot themselves in the foot and they had a few lulls. Here's what Broncos lineman Mike McGlinchey had to tell us yesterday at practice.
I think there was a lot of good. I think the first couple, obviously the first 3 drives were what they were, scoring touchdowns, and then we just can't have that lull that we did in the middle of the game there. Those 4 or 5 drives that really stalled us, that we weren't able to produce any points or really even first downs to keep our defense off the field. And then we came back a little bit in the fourth quarter and showed a lot of fight to execute long drives to get some points and keep it, a miracle shot to almost tie the game. And so there's a lot of positives to take from it. And I think the biggest thing is we got to stop hurting ourselves first, and then we can worry about taking control and winning games.
And he said it there. We have to stop hurting ourselves first, and then we can worry about taking control and winning games. When you have a 21-3 lead, you have to find a way to put your foot on the throat of an opponent. You got to rev the engine. You got to rev the gas there. And I'm thinking Denver's going to have to get back to that this week. And look, it's a challenge with Vic Fangio's defense that really tries to take away and mitigate the big plays from happening. So are we going to see a game plan where the Fangio defense is going to force Russell Wilson, the offense, to take the short play? Or can you capitalize on a couple of pop shots? Denver's going to have to find a way to do that. They're going to have to find a way to run the ball effectively against an NFL defense right now in Miami that is surrendering some yards on the ground. If Denver can find a saving grace to get the run game going, then they can take a couple of those shots to Marvin Mims, who obviously had some really impressive plays for Denver here in week 2, 2 catches, a $113 and a touchdown, a 45-yard punt return. He also, I think at one point, it was noted by NFL Next Gen Stats where he had some of the highest speeds in terms of that, miles per hour in terms of his catches downfield, or he had, I think it was 3 of his 4 attempts downfield where he had an even in the return game where he clocked at least 20 to 21 miles per hour there. You love to see that. But hey, Denver's going to have their work cut out for them against the Miami Dolphins, and we'll see where they go from here. But Broncos country, thank you so much for rocking with us on this morning's episode of Good Morning Broncos. Make sure you tune in to tomorrow's episode of the show because we'll have more stuff from the locker room, more player interviews. Plus, we'll also get into a little bit of our focus on keys to victory, players to watch for, and you can get all that, much more on tomorrow's episode, Good Morning Broncos, here on Mile High Sports YouTube page.